welcome to the India Roadshow, a CNBC TV 18 special coming to you from San Francisco. I'm Shereen Bhan. The Finance Minister, Arun Jaitley, has been on an outreach effort in the United States of America for the past 9 days. He's been talking to investors across different sectors to try and convince them about the strength of the India story. Accompanying him in New York was a delegation from FICCI, and accompanying him here in San Francisco is a delegation from the Confederation of Indian Industry. Well, we were at the iconic Stanford University, and I caught up with some of India's tallest business leaders to talk disruption, innovation, India 2020, and a lot more. Joining me here, Naushad Forbes, let me start by asking you, in India, we'd like to focus on the 3 E's, education, employability, and employment. We're here on the Stanford University, an annual budget of $5 billion. We don't hope to have universities in India with that kind of money, but a center of excellence in India, ranking in the sort of global pecking order. Do you believe that that is going to be possible anytime soon?
I think very much so. I think we're starting to see now the setting up of universities in India, which have excellence as their main objective. So quality rather than quantity, and which are starting to be full service, which are starting to be liberal arts universities and not purely professional schools. I think that's a hugely positive development. There are now about 4 or 5 universities that have been started with that objective. I think it's just a matter of time before we do start seeing this happen. I think the good thing to remember about Stanford is that Stanford celebrated its centenary. It's considered a relatively new university, but it celebrated its centenary about 15 years ago, and more, 25 years ago.
Okay.
And it's now a reasonably old university, and it's really taken. I would say it was a national leading institution in the 50s and 60s, and it's been a 50-year process to go from being one of the country's leading institutions to being one of the world's leading institutions. So building a great university is a 30-40-year project, and that's the kind of horizon that one really needs to build a culture of excellence that runs across so many different fields as we see here. Okay.
Pramod, Bhasin, let me ask you, because you're involved in the skills development space as well, and the government has mandated now the government has mandated skills development as one of its priority areas. But are we getting it right? Yes, we are getting the targets that we've set for ourselves, but are we getting the mantra really right as far as skills development and what is relevant for India?
I think the progress we've made on the skills side is actually pretty remarkable. I myself have been more than pleasantly surprised, because the number of initiatives that are happening on the ground, the ministries come out with a strategy for the country, the number of players who are joining the skills development area as private sector players working with people like NSVC is fantastic. I think the area, though, where we need to do a lot more is the overall education space. Skills needs to start in school and colleges, and we have to free our colleges up from the stranglehold that it currently has under the ministries. And with UGC and all of the other things, we have to free it up to private sector enterprise at all levels. So skills is making progress. I wish we were doing more on the education side. I really hope this government would do that.
Okay, speaking of education, Rishad, let me ask you, the Azim Premji Foundation is doing a lot of work in the education space. Do you believe that the effort to, in a sense, privatize education, if I could call it that, we still seem to be uncomfortable with the idea of allowing the corporate sector or giving it a free run as far as education is concerned? Do you believe that that is the need of the hour today?
So I'm actually a big believer in the government system, right? Today, virtually every child in India has a school within a 1.5 to 2 kilometer radius, and you can't replicate that kind of infrastructure through a private setup. I think it's an important need for the private sector to work with the public sector, leveraging their infrastructure, leveraging their capabilities, to really institutionalize and build capability and build expertise and improve the quality of education fundamentally. We at the foundation have also set up a university, actually. The university focuses much more on producing education managers. So we have 2 programs, one MA in development, one an MA in education. But the focus there is very, very specialized about really building people who can ultimately go back into the system, go back into tier 2, tier 3 cities, go back into rural India and help fundamentally improve the
But what are the
ecosystem
challenges that you face, specifically when it comes to the university, as well as partnering with the government? Because there is an issue of wanting to keep, a hold on control as far as the government is concerned.
No, I think you have to have patience. The process is slow. The process in education fundamentally is slow. It's not a magic button. It doesn't change over the next couple of years. So you have to have a huge time horizon in terms of how long the change takes. But I think the governments are very receptive. We work with states where governments are very, very open to the idea of engaging with partners, of engaging on help. And we've been very, very positive, and our experience has been very, very positive.
Okay. Mr. Tata, let me ask you this, because, we're in Silicon Valley. This is, of course, the innovation capital of the world. How do we inculcate and nurture a culture of innovation and a culture of disruption in India?
Well, India has always been a center of entrepreneurship, and Indians are perhaps one of the world's best entrepreneurs. The fact that they've come here and they're so prominent in this part of the country is testament to that fact. I think Indians love doing things their own way and working for themselves.
How much of that is also, not outside of India, but in India on account of trying to game the system?
No, I think Indians love individuality, and I don't think it's all about gaming the system, but it's all about doing what they like to do.
Okay. Nurturing innovation, nurturing an environment of disruption. Ravi, Parthasarathy, the infrastructure sector in India is looking for disruptive models today. Not a lot is actually working at this point in time. Everybody's talking about new hybrid models to actually get the infrastructure sector on the move. What are we looking at a couple of years down the line?
I think on the whole, there has been quite a lot of private infrastructure built out. But what happens is a few projects go bad, and that gets reported very extensively. I'm not blaming the media for it. It's just human nature that you report man bites dog, not dog bites man. So I think probably today India is #1 in the world where PPP is concerned.
But yet you talk to people and they say the PPP model is not working and we need to review the model. The government itself in its budget, in the previous budget, talked about reviewing the PPP model, setting up PPP India. Of course, we haven't heard anything post that.
I'm not so sure, because we are still having a lot of PPP being rolled out. Now, it is true that some of the PPP projects do not work out. But when you look at any infrastructure project, it's important to know there are multiple views on why something went wrong. It could be something relatively simple, like all the land was not given on time. But that can be really taken out of context. So it's not easy to make these projects work. I think the bias towards going out of PPP is perhaps due to some parts of government finding it simpler to give a construction contract than to leverage private resources in what is arguably a much more difficult effort. But in a typical PPP, if you take 100 rupees as the project cost, you take equity as 30 rupees, the government share could be as little as 15.
Okay.
So look at the leverage which is happening.
Okay.
I think that's worth taking some trouble over.
Okay. So if you're saying that the infrastructure sector in India is not as broke as it's made out to be, when do you really see a recovery coming in? Because signs on the ground don't seem to suggest that we're seeing one yet.
That's fair enough. That's a fair observation. And I think what's happened is there's been an accumulation of debt of most infrastructure companies. The markets have been very unkind. If you look at the last 3 years, there's virtually no capital which has been raised in any sector, let alone infrastructure. So if you raise $500 million, it's big news in India. It's happened, I think, once in the last 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the real problem. And I think these are problems which take time to unwind. It cannot be done overnight. But I think in the last 12 months we've seen new energy on the ground with what the new government is doing. And the purpose of Mr. Jaitley's trip to California and New York is also to tell investors that we are open for business. Okay. And this is the time to come back. Now when it does come back, it's going to come like an avalanche.
You really believe that? It's going to come back like an avalanche, is it?
It will.
Let's do a quick dipstick. How many of you believe that it's going to come back like an avalanche? Pramod, Bhasin, is that a no, maybe?
I think it's going to be good, strong, steady growth. And that's really what we want. I don't think it'll be an avalanche. I But I think the foundations are being laid, I think this time quite effectively. But it will take a long time. You know, we have a legacy to get over. We are understandably impatient because we've all been waiting for this to happen. But there are some fundamental changes that are being made on the ground which will yield results, but we have to give it time.
Well, it's time for us to take a break here on the India Roadshow. We're coming to you from the Stanford University in conversation with the delegates of the Confederation of Indian Industry who are accompanying the Finance Minister Arun Jaitley as he reaches out to investors here in the United States of America. A quick break and we'll be right back.